Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Jay and welcome to the channel and welcome to October Lake and Planet Zoo, a series where we're working on creating this really large park situated in the Canadian Highlands. In today's episode, we're going to be building a cliffside habitat for a few Galapagos giant tortoises. If that sounds good to you and if you do like today's video, please do consider leaving a like on the video, and of course for more Planet Zoo content, please do subscribe as well. Now, in today's video, like I just said, we are going to be building a habitat for a Galapagos giant tortoise. In fact, we're going to be building a habitat for 3 of them, 4 of them? We have a few of them in here. But I didn't actually start out this habitat thinking I was going to be building a habitat for one of these guys. In fact, I initially planned it for an antelope species, probably the bongo, I thought. But then I realized it was way too small. And at the same time, I felt, it just didn't really look like somewhere I'd want to have an antelope. But then I realized it actually fit really, really well for the Galapagos giant tortoise. Way better than I expected, in fact. It fit like perfectly. And as you can see on screen, we're going to be building it right by the side of the cliff here, which is a little bit precarious, but don't worry, we have plenty of walls and stuff in place so the tortoises aren't going to absolutely just yeet themselves off the cliff and onto the bottom of the park there. So do not worry, they are very safe. We are going to be building it next to where the pangolins were, of course, so it's very close to the tropical house, which again makes it a bit more appropriate as well for the Galapagos giant tortoises. It just fits really well. And I think they look very happy and very comfortable in this little enclosure here. So I was very pleased with it overall. Now, I do apologize very quickly. It is a very short episode this week. It's only about, if I'm not mistaken, something like 10-12 minutes long. That's unfortunate because I've had quite a lot of deadlines this week for university, so I've been really busy and I only could put out a relatively short, smaller build this week. Hopefully we'll get some bigger ones coming up soon, so keep an eye out for those ones. But yeah, as of today, we're just gonna have this little one. But I still think it's a pretty nice build, a very nice, calm, simple build, nothing too fancy. We're using a lot of the same aesthetics we used in last week's red panda build, so a lot of the stained wood, which we've colored this really nice kind of light woody color, and we're using some of the airlock buildings that we made the last week for the red pandas, and we're going to be repurposing them as a viewing area for the Galapagos giant tortoises. So for this, there is this specific viewing area, of course, where you could sit inside and get away from the heat or the sun a little bit, or actually we are in the taiga biome, so probably the cold actually, so you can get out the cold for a bit and look at the tortoises from in here. But you can also view them from outside as you're walking up the path here. But generally speaking, both are a pretty good view of the tortoises, and you're more than likely to see them out in the open anyways. They have a little shelter on the inside which we put together later on, but generally speaking, you will get a very good view of them no matter where you are within the habitat. Now, as we're building the viewing area and stuff, and before we get onto the habitat itself, let's talk a little bit about Galapagos giant tortoises. Now, these are another animal which we've done several times on the channel before. In fact, we've done them twice now. Once for Sannikov Land and once for Bumi Reptile Sanctuary. Those are 2 of my older park builds. And in those ones, of course, we built very different styles of tortoise habitat. But I just think they're such a great animal to have in zoos. They really exemplify the fact that zoos do such good work with conservation, because Galapagos giant tortoises were really badly endangered. And one amazing thing is that thanks to conservation efforts with zoos and wildlife parks and nature reserves, they've had thousands of captive bred babies that they've been released back into the wild onto the Galapagos Islands, and now they've really rebounded. And they're not critically endangered anymore, they're now vulnerable, which is still endangered but significantly better than before, which is quite amazing, and it is really cool. So the main captive breedings populations are done kind of in places like Galapagos National Park and stuff like that, but zoos do them as well. So it's really impressive. One really cool population success story is that of the Española tortoise. So it's one of the subspecies, and it was nearly completely extinct. You only had 3 males and 12 females, and they were so widely dispersed that they would not even have met in the wild. So what they did is they brought all those tortoises to Charles Darwin Research Station and in 33 years, they gave birth to 1,200 babies. That is incredible. So from 15 adults to well over 1,000 individuals. Now that is a captive breeding success story if I've ever heard one. It's amazing, and now they're kind of working on repopulating the wild. It is really quite impressive, and it's just one of those things where it really makes you realize the importance of captive breeding programs. Of course, they're not perfect and they don't work for every species, but in situations like this, they are an absolute lifeline. So it is very cool. Learning a bit more about these tortoises, they are of course the largest tortoise species. They're very large, they're very heavy, they've got these amazing big shells. And there are actually two different shell types. There are the domed shells, which you see in the game here, and sometimes there are the saddleback tortoises, which have much longer, slightly curved shells. So those are a bit more different, and it's more prominent in different subspecies. And generally speaking, they exist in areas with a bit more drier climates, the saddlebacks. But it is pretty cool. These guys are just generally such interesting animals, I think. They do pretty well in captivity. They don't actually do an awful lot. They are very chill animals. They can just, for the most part, sit around and graze. They eat all sorts of like plant matter, cacti, grasses, lots and lots of grasses actually, fruits, leaves, occasionally seeds. They don't necessarily drink water very much. They in fact get most of their moisture from the vegetation they eat, from sap and things like that. And in fact, they've been seen going 6 months without going to a water source, which is very impressive. So like they're kind of like there's like koalas and other animals like that where they don't really drink very much water, but they get it from the vegetation. So some other cool stuff about these guys is that they, generally speaking, are just very vital to the study of evolution. So if you know about Charles Darwin, he's the guy who came up with the theory of evolution. Of course, it wasn't just him. There was Alfred Russel Wallace and other people like that. But Charles Darwin went on this really historical trip to the Galapagos Islands. And there, where he discovered these tortoises and the finches and stuff like that, they were all really critical to him kind of coming up with this theory of evolution. And so these animals are just vital to our understanding of science and biology as a whole. And it's just, just really cool. They're also an example of island gigantism. So species that are isolated on islands tend to grow either much larger or much smaller. That happens. So island gigantism and island dwarfism. These guys are an example of the gigantism, of course. But dwarfism is also surprisingly common. For example, if you've heard of the Bornean pygmy elephants or things like that, where large animals become smaller on islands. It's just a very interesting phenomenon, and there's so many examples of it, even in the fossil record. There are even dinosaurs, such as Magyarosaurus, I believe, and things like Balauibondok. So different dinosaurs that have been discovered on islands that are either larger or smaller than you would necessarily expect otherwise. And yeah, this tortoise is a great example of one. But yes, aside from tortoises though, let's just go back on the screen and talk about the build itself for a little bit. As you can see, I've sunken the ground a little bit, built the walls around the outside, and used a lot of the tiger rocks to blend it in with the cliff face a little bit more. So it looks again like we've built it very close to the cliff face, and these walls are very useful to protect the tortoises from just completely plummeting off and landing on someone. Because this is almost directly above where the entrance of the park actually is. So it makes for a very cool sight, especially in the cinematic. You can see, when you look at it from above, you can see like the ground, the height differences. It's kind of crazy. And you may have noticed I'm putting in some enrichment items here that don't fit the tortoise. That's because initially, of course, I did consider using this for an animal like the bongo or something like that. But it was only after this, when I put in the bongo, and I realized, oh, this just doesn't work. And I realized also, this works way better as a habitat for a tortoise. So completely changed out my idea. And here you see me building a shelter for the tortoise. Relatively basic one, just made out of some planks and wood, but even really basic shelters like this I think look quite nice. I might change it out a little bit just because I like the main skeleton of it, but I'm not the biggest fan of these timber pieces that I put on top. So between episodes I might change that, but yeah, we'll see. Generally, I say a lot of things like this, like, oh, I'll change this between episodes, and then I completely forget. So it entirely depends. We'll see whether this actually gets done. But yeah, as you can see, that's just generally a very nice basic shelter with a little bit of asymmetry on the front and back. I think things like that just make it help things like this look a little bit more unique, give them a bit more character. And here, of course, couldn't leave out my favorite faux rocks. Use them to add a little bit more pebbliness, a little bit more roughness, ruggedness to the terrain, to look like the tortoises have a bit more enrichment in terms of terrain they can clamber over and walk around on. Because with reptiles like tortoises, enrichment is a little bit harder to make than for more active animals. So by changing up the terrain a bit, giving them some obstacle to climb over, for example logs or, you know, like interesting rocks and stuff like that, and surfaces they can rub against, that kind of helps a little bit with the enrichment. Now here I am adding the foliage, just a couple saplings plus a beech tree. I think that looks pretty good. And here I'm just editing the fence a little bit to line it up. So you can see there's this concrete path along the side that's just purely a staff path, of course. Guests can't really go down there, and I've made like a little side entrance there for the staff to walk down. Again, it is a kind of a false path. Staff can't actually walk on there, even though it's meant to be a staff path. The actual staff path is hidden deep inside the tropical house, and you actually have to go underground and stuff. It's weirdly complex and very unusual, but it works, so I'm very happy with it. And it does make it very hard to edit later on, so whenever I put things down I have to make sure they're right off the bat. And here we are at the end, so just want to say thank you so much for today's video. Again, sorry for the shorter video today. If you did like the video, definitely give it a like. Do comment down below if you have any suggestions for future builds, and as always, please do subscribe for more Planet Zoo content, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.